This ain't your granddaddy's gunship battle. No siree. Why, back in my day, if you wanted a gunship battle, you had to travel to Northrend. 5,500 miles. Uphill. In the snow. No, I mean seriously, Northrend was like crazy far away from here. I mean, what was Blizzard thinking? Warmaster Blackhorn is a two-phase fight, and it is the 6th boss in Dragon Soul. Phase 1 is an ad control phase, while Phase 2 is an execution phase. At the time of our testing, Blackhorn had around 51 million HP, but used plenty of ads. Throughout the fight, you'll also need to kill Twilight Elite Dreadblades, Twilight Elite Slayers, Twilight Assault Drakes, Twilight Sappers, and Goriona, the boss's flying mount. You'll want to bring 2 tanks, 5 to 7 healers, and a good balance of strong DPS. We'll remind you that this video and strategy guide were created during the PTR testing, and if the fight changes significantly when it goes live, we will create a new guide to reflect this. Thank you. Throughout Phase 1, the raid will be forced to contend with multiple ads. The first will be the Dragon Riders. These ads, which come in sets of 2, are the Twilight Elite Dreadblade and the Twilight Elite Slayer. Dreadblades have the Degeneration spell. This is a cleave that deals moderate shadow damage and ticks for additional shadow damage over the next minute. This effect can stack. Slayers come with Brutal Strike, a single target attack that deals mild physical damage and ticks for additional physical damage over the next minute. This effect can also stack. Both ads can Blade Rush. This causes them to charge the location of a random player, dealing high physical damage to all players in their path. Throughout Phase 1, Twilight Assault Drakes will bombard the ship with Twilight Barrage. This blast of dark energy deals very high shadow damage that is split between all players in the blast radius, as well as the ship itself. If no player absorbs the blast, the ship will take the full damage. As Phase 1 goes on, harpoon guns will automatically fire at the drakes and reel them in. This is only temporary, however, as the drakes will eventually break free from the line each time. Occasionally, Goriona will fire a Twilight Onslaught at the ship. This is similar to Twilight Barrage, except much larger and much more powerful. Again, the damage is split between all players in the blast radius and the ship itself. Occasionally, Twilight Sapper ads will spawn. These ads will attempt to rush to the bridge of the ship, and upon reaching it will detonate a powerful explosive. This deals massive damage to the ship and all nearby players. Once 3 waves of ads have been defeated, Phase 2 will begin. In Phase 2, players must fight Warmaster Blackhorn and his mount Goriona. Goriona will simply launch Twilight Flames at random players from the air. These hit for moderate initial shadow damage and remain on the ground for a short duration. Blackhorn is able to devastate his current target, dealing high physical damage and sundering their armor. This effect can of course stack. He will also use Disrupting Roar. This deals moderate physical damage to all players and interrupts spellcasting of all nearby players. Throughout Phase 2, he will periodically Shockwave, dealing high physical damage to all players in the frontal cone and temporarily stunning them. Finally, Blackhorn has the spell Vengeance, causing him to do 1% more damage for each % of health he is missing. Let's get down to the strat. Phase 1 is about 2 things: protecting the ship from the multiple attacks it is taking, and DPSing down ads quickly and efficiently. If the ship sustains too much damage, it will die and the raid will wipe, but if ads are not handled properly, the raid will be overrun. Begin by choosing proper positioning. There will be many ways to do this, but the 2 quickest options are either a loose spread all around the ship, or split the raid into 3 to 4 groups and let the group spread loosely in a small area. The intention behind this is to make absorbing Twilight Barrages easier. Drakes will consistently bombard the ship with Twilight Barrage, and it is important that players run to the blast area to absorb the damage. Each blast will need around 3 players to absorb it safely, and this will keep the ship from taking the damage of the attack. For the most part, ranged DPS and healers can worry about absorbing these, but if the blasts are closer to the melee area, don't hesitate to let melee soak them. Players will need to know their DPS priorities, and this will be dictated by role. All players must focus on Twilight Sappers first. If this ad reaches the bridge, it will immediately take off 20% of the ship's health. Players must focus this ad down quickly and ignore anything else. After that, melee will prioritize Twilight Elites, while range will focus on Twilight Drakes. Have each tank pick up 1 Twilight Elite and try to tank them near each other. but not on top of each other or facing the same way. They can cleave, so keep that in mind with their positioning. Ideally, melee should be able to cleave these adds down easily. Throughout the phase, the harpoons will pull Twilight Drakes toward the ship for ranged DPS to attack. Make sure ranged are focusing on the Drakes since they will not stay harpooned forever and will return to the sky if not killed quick enough. When there are no Drakes available to attack, ranged should be helping melee DPS down the Twilight Elites. On top of looking for Twilight Barrages to absorb, players will need to watch for Twilight Elite's Blade Rush Charge. The Elite will target a random player and charge toward them. This attack deals high physical damage to all players in the path. The path can be predetermined by watching for the charge graphic on the ground. This appears as a line comprised of multiple red circles on the ground between the ad and its target. As of our testing, however, this graphic proved to be very faint and difficult to notice. Even if avoiding the charge seems hard, it is important to move after the ad is charged to avoid the possibility of being hit by a follow-up cleave. Finally, in Phase 1, anytime Gloriona casts a Twilight Onslaught, all players should move into it. This blast will deal massive damage but splits between all players. In order to keep the damage low, as many players as possible should be in the blast radius. Your raid may opt to leave tanks out to avoid cleave problems, but be ready to move away from the charge after stacking up. Each time these massive blasts occur is a good opportunity for a raid cooldown. Barrier, Spirit Link Totem, and just about everything else is an optimal choice for easing healing during these. Once 3 waves of adds have been defeated, if the ship is still alive, Blackhorn will jump onto the deck to greet you and Phase 2 will begin. Immediately, ranged DPS should go all out on Gloriona, who will remain in the air shooting Twilight Flames at random players. Simply move out of these as they leave dangerous fire patches on the ground. Gloriona will not stick around for the whole fight and instead retreats after taking too much damage. During this, Blackhorn will use Devastate on the tanks. This applies a Sunder Armor effect and will require the tanks to taunt off of each other. Melee are free to stack up behind the boss, but ranged should avoid standing too close as he will occasionally use Disrupting Roar, dealing moderate physical damage and interrupting spellcasting for all nearby players. In the same regard, however, players cannot stand too far away because the boss will use Shockwave. After turning to face a random player, Blackhorn will unleash a wave of force in a large cone that deals high physical damage and stuns all targets it hits. Players further away will have a much harder time dodging the effect as the radius will be greater. Due to the boss's vengeance, he will become stronger as his health goes down, so all of his spells will begin to do more damage later in Phase 2. Be ready to use raid cooldowns again and healing cooldowns to make it through the last few Disrupting Roars. DPS should not hesitate to use damage reduction cooldowns in order to ease the healing they take. This is a fight with a lot of moving parts, but it becomes very easy when each player focuses on just their task. Though there is a fair bit going on, individually players only need to handle 2 to 3 mechanics. Try to keep this in mind and just think about what you need to accomplish. If you found this guide helpful or informative, remember to bookmark us at LearntoRaid.com, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitch TV and Twitter. As always, we hope this guide was helpful, and we'll see you at the next boss.
I wasn't feeling so good. I just didn't feel like playing anymore. So I went home, and I got all comfy and cozy and all scrunched up in front of my phonograph. And I sat there and I closed my eyes and listened to all the sweet music.